Yeah, thank you so much, Roisin. I'm going to share that now. Um, okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And just to give everyone a bit of a heads up, I think I might have had a little bit of a glitch with my internet this morning. So if I drop in and out briefly, apologies for that in advance. But thank you so much for inviting us here. And we're delighted to be a part of this webinar. And as you said, 14 Henrietta Street, which is a museum in the north inner city of Dublin, really goes into the social histories of the community. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about how we engage with those communities today. And as you said, Roisin, we were last month awarded the Soletto Prize, which we were absolutely delighted about because we're a relatively young museum, and that prize is related to work that museums do with engaging their communities. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about that work today. My name's Kate. Anyway, I'm the Creative Engagement Lead for Heritage, and I'm joined by Sheila, who I think is somewhere.
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm a tour guide here at 14 Henrietta Street.
So we're going to go over a few of the different strands of work that we do today. But first, we're going to talk a little bit about who we are more widely, where we came from, and how we work. So as you mentioned, Roisin, we are run by Dublin City Council Culture Company, which is a organisation that was established in 2018. And we run cultural projects and initiatives in buildings across the city with and for the people of Dublin. And we really work on a principle of the social value of culture, and culture in the broadest sense of the word. So not just galleries and museums, but what people cook for dinner, what people read, what people do in their spare time, really, really broad sense. And we collaborate with people across the city and businesses and other organizations, other cultural institutions to embed cultural experiences and increase cultural participation across Dublin. And we have this vision for Dublin where culture connects everybody and everything. And our mission is to connect people through culture and conversation. So we really believe in the power of human stories. And this really comes into our work at 14 Henrietta Street, and that when people feel connected to their communities, they feel safer and stronger and are healthier. And these ways of working really form the bedrock of everything we do at 14 Henrietta Street. So I hope it sets the context for what we're going to talk about in the next 25 minutes or so. So over to Sheila to talk a little bit about the museum itself.
So hello everyone. In 2018, we took operational control of 14 Henrietta Street, and the building has a history that spans over 300 years, beginning as a Georgian townhouse on one of the most desirable streets in Dublin, to later years when it became a tenement home to over 100 people in the 19th and 20th century. At one point, a third of Dublin's population lived in the tenements. And because of this, the story of the tenements is part of many people's personal history. When we opened as a museum, we were astonished at how many visitors had personal stories about this particular time. And the house has become a receptacle of memory for the community. So our aims are to share, engage, and discover. So in sharing, we tell stories. We're retelling the story of the lives of the people of number 14 Henrietta Street. By engaging, we make connections. By listening and talking, we make connections with visitors, historians, citizens, local residents, and former residents and their families. And in discovering, we uncover history by researching the house and its occupants, and we continue to learn from the memories and knowledge of others. So essentially, we tell the story of the house, but just as importantly, we tell the stories of the lives lived here. We absorb people's stories and connect with them and their communities, respecting and reciprocating, welcoming opinion, we get a lot of that, and discourse and sharing the knowledge that we've gained from this. We are constantly surprised at the seemingly never-ending history that comes to light here at number 14, and of our neighbours as well. So ranging from the cleverly Herbert Sims designed 1930s 4-storey block of flats, which is to the rear of number 14, and also to the King's Inns, which is at the top of the street. So I'm going to talk about the origins of the museum here. The last residents moved out in the 1970s, which seems not too long ago, in fact. And the conservation process started in 2000. So Dublin City Council began this process in 2000, and the conservation team sought to retain as much as possible of the original fabric of the building. At all times, there was community engagement on memory collecting days, and that informed the development of the museum. So by the time the 1970s had come around, the building had been virtually abandoned by its owners after the basement on the 3rd floor, which is the attic, became uninhabitable. During this period of neglect, the processes of decay accelerated, leading to the rotting of the structural timbers, loss of decorative plasterwork, and of course, vandalism. So it was leaving the house close to imminent collapse. So Dublin City Council began the process in 2000, like I said, and also as a result of the Henrietta Street Conservation Plan, they embarked on a 10-year-long journey to purchase, rescue, stabilise and conserve the house, preserving it for generations to come. So before the museum's opening in 2018, Dublin City Council Heritage Officer Charles Duggan and conservation architect Grania Shaffrey led the research on conservation and preservation of the museum. They meticulously recorded all artifacts found, but also earmarked little fragments of lino, paint and wallpaper, material discovered that might have been deemed everyday and not of value, but has proven to be an important clue to living in the tenements. And they have sparked conversations about the daily and weekly chores carried out by all, hierarchy within families, products and tools used, smells, very important, cooking and cleaning. So while mundane, these daily tasks and objects hold visceral memories for our visitors. Grania Shaffrey, as the conservation architect, was diligent in uncovering layers and keeping the essential material that she discovered from all periods of the building's history. Charles Duggan held tenement memory days and invited people to bring objects, photos, and to share their memories during recorded interviews. This then developed or informed the development of the museum. The picture that you're looking at here is of Mrs. Dowling's room. And the team met the Dowling family as part of this process. And they remembered they remembered what this room used to look like, particularly during the 1950s and 60s. So what you see here today is an authentic snapshot of one family's home at this time in the building's history. The room is filled with objects that many people might recognize. You might see things that you might recognize from your own family's history there, like the Clonakilty, I think it's the Clonakilty pottery there, the willow pattern. And some of these pieces actually belong to the Dowlings, including the family photographs. So when we come to this room, our visitors' reactions range from sorrow to joy. And it is here that both the guides and fellow visitors hear incredible stories of loves lost, resilience in the face of hardship, and sickness, particularly TB, but also of wonderful memories of traditions and customs from wakes to Christmases. So it's a great honour for us as guides to receive these powerful and emotive stories. So our tours at the moment, we have tours of the building, and where we invite people to share their personal recollections on the tour. And we have walking tours of the local area. So these are being designed in response to what people have told us in the oral histories. And we also have musical tours, which happen monthly at the moment, where we invite people to sing along with the tour guides. So the core tour of 14 Henrietta Street is accessible by guided tour only. As guides, we are transmitting people's memories and also receive those memories as we walk through on the tour. So it's a conversation with people for whom the story of the tenements is part of their family history. The walking tour, we're developing this at the moment. It's of the local area, and it draws on local social histories, including where local people worked, like the markets and on the docks, schools, recreation, and religion. The musical tours, the tours will take you through tenement life, through the songs, and people will remind us of the ballads and songs that they would have sung at certain occasions in the tenements, even wakes. So there are plenty of opportunities for people to actively participate and contribute to the tour experience. So no one tour is the same, because you never know who actually might be on the tour. So Kate.
Thank you, Sheila. I'm going to talk a little bit now about our current oral history project and some of the other wider programming work we're doing with our communities. And I think as you've heard from Sheila, we're very, very fortunate and we're very privileged, because we are meeting people all the time on the tours who have a direct personal connection to the tenements. We have this amazing community around us. And we wanted to build on the legacy that had been left by Charles Duggan in the early years of the museum and capture the intangible heritage that we were hearing from our visitors. So this is where the Your Tenement Memories Oral History Project came from. And that started in late 2018. And it's continuing to this day. It's an ongoing project. And it had three main aims. So firstly, as I said, to capture that intangible heritage and invite people to share their stories, reflect on connections between their lives then and now. So quite unusually for a museum, most of our collection, other than the building itself, is actually stories rather than material objects. So about 50% of the building's collection would be the building itself, the fabric and the bricks and the mortar. 25% would be the oral histories and the stories that we're hearing from people. Another 20% would be objects like the ones that you saw in the picture of Mrs. Dowling's room, many of which belonged to people who have a direct connection to the building. And 5% is what we call the artistic responses. So when you go around the building on the tour, you will have your guide telling the story, but at intervals you will have videos of different aspects of the building story projected onto the walls, or in one case onto a bed, which was a poem written by poet Paula Meehan. So that would be another 5%, but you can see how really crucial these stories are to the way that we look after the building. And in many cases, the story of the tenements hasn't really had a public platform. And like Sheila said, a third of people in Dublin lived in tenements at one time. So it is a hugely important aspect of the city's history. And a lot of the people we talk to don't even recognize the value of their own memories and stories. So we wanted to really honor that and create a safe repository for those memories, have a process where we could collect and protect those memories for the future. Our second aim, and this goes back to what I was saying at the start about the wider aims of the company, is to connect people and communities. So across the 20th century, The Georgian townhouses, in most cases, which had housed the tenements, were deteriorating and in some cases actually collapsed entirely. So the suburb areas were built, like Ballyfermot and Cabra and Coolock, were really sort of stretching you're going well beyond the original walls of the city itself here. We're talking about walled towns, but they were created in order to house the former residents of the tenements. So these the people who lived there would have been moved out there across the 20th century. And in many cases, they are still living there. So we wanted to go out to these areas and actually take the museum to them. And we held sessions in libraries and community centres, spaces that were easily accessible to people, and invited people to come in and have a chat with us about their memories. And this brings us on to the third aim of the project, which is really crucial, which is when we are collecting these memories, to make sure that we're being totally ethical, really sensitive about it. These are people's precious memories. In many cases, they had never shared these stories with anybody before, not even their children. So it was an incredibly privileged position to be in, but it also meant that we had a great duty of care to make sure that we were being really careful about how we handled those memories. So it was a totally people-centered process. When we were having conversations, we were taking notes, but we invited people to give their informed consent to the use of what we were recording and review what we'd written. People could opt in to be anonymous if they wanted to. They could have a friend or relative provide a counter signature if they wanted to, just to provide that extra level of security. And of course, there was an open invitation to get in touch with us if they wanted to talk more about that. And we invited some of these people to come and do a recorded interview with us. And altogether, we spoke to this day, I think it's over 160 people. So an astonishingly rich collection of stories of the tenements. And this brings me then to the next slide, which is a bit about what actually happens to those memories afterwards. So we're in the process of cataloguing them into a collections management database, and we're hoping that one day they'll be available to be used and viewed by historians and other researchers. But in the meantime, we are responding to different themes that have come out of those memories in the programming that we do at the museum. So an example of this would be our Tea Time Talks program. So that's a series of talks which responds to different stories across the 300 years of the building. But as you can imagine, the stories we're hearing from our community engagement give us so many possibilities for telling the story of the tenements in this way. And the still you see at the back there is from a talk we had online earlier this year. Obviously, a lot of our talks have had to be online over the past year. And this was about football in the city. The people we have been talking to through the Oral History Project, most of them would have been children at the time they lived in the tenements. So as you can imagine, we've got this huge collection of memories about what it was like to play in the tenements as a child, what it was like growing up in the tenements, and football came up again and again, massive 20-a-side teams on the streets playing football. So it would be very easy for us to go to the best historian in sports and invite them to come and give the talk. And in many cases we do that, but we don't just work with historians. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about engaging with as many people as possible. We invite local people and local community groups to give these talks. And this talk was given by Gerard Farrell of the Bohemian Foundation, which is linked to the Bohemian Football Club in the North Inner City. And we find that by doing it in this way, we're actually reaching more people. Many of whom have never heard of 14 Henrietta Street. And not only that, but when we're running these events, we're inviting people to share their own memories of the tenements. So what Sheila was talking about earlier, that process of sharing and engaging and discovering, this is a great example of how that's a constant cycle. And we've met so many amazing people through running these events. So sorry, I skipped through the points there. On to the next slide then. These are 3 publications that we've recently released that explore different aspects of the building's history. This is in response to our visitors asking us to have something to take away with them when they visited the museum. So these are not academic at all, that in a sense that they're totally accessible if someone just has a general interest in the history of the building or the history of Dublin. And the one on the far right there, that says 14 Henrietta Street from tenement to suburbia 1922 to 1929. That was written by historian Donald Fallon, and he combed through our oral history collection when he was writing that book, and he uses extensive quotations from those oral histories to really make sure that that period of time is told in the words of the people that we were talking to. So another strand of our work that we do at the museum is further engagement, obviously a huge strand of it. And we found that when we were going out to the libraries in the suburbs, we had a lot of nursing homes and daycare centres get in touch with us. And a lot of the residents there had memories of the tenements and they wanted to take part, but they couldn't actually physically leave the nursing home or the daycare centre where they were usually based. So we, we responded to that, and we actually went out to them. And you can see in this picture here, this is with the St Andrew's Daycare Centre in Rialto. We changed the process a little bit. So it wasn't just a conversation. We brought objects with us from the museum's handling collection. We got a packet of rinso in the back there, marbles, ceramic hot water bottle, carbolic soap, to provide a really sensory stimulant for talking about memories. And we found that those objects were a really wonderful way of connecting with people, some of whom might have had dementia, or needed a bit of a sensory prompt to encourage remembering about those times. So we're still doing that, and we're working on quite a large piece of work at the moment, which hopefully will bring the entire museum experience to people who can't physically access the museum. So I won't say too much about that at the moment, but it's very exciting, and watch that space. Another large piece of work we do is working with local schools. So as you can imagine, and like Mark was saying actually in his presentation at the start, particularly games are so universal and are really relatable to children, no matter the time. It's the same in the museum. So there are loads of ways that the museum not only links in with the learning objectives of the history curriculum and other curriculum and syllabuses at different levels, but the story of the children of 14 Henrietta Street is really relatable and a great way of connecting with children who come to the museum. So we invite local schools to play an active role in shaping the tours. We hold co-creation workshops with local schools and children, students and teachers to tell us what they're interested in and tell us what they want to see and do in the building. And it's all the time we're trying to build relationships with the people we've got around us. So this is St Mary's School, which is just up the road from the museum. They can literally just walk down in 5 minutes. So that's an example of another strand of our engagement work. And we've also developed online resources for the 4 different levels: primary, junior, cycle, leaving cert and transition year. And we held this year online workshops with teachers to get their feedback on the resources and input, and help orientate them with the online resources, which have been a really useful tool while teaching remotely. Conscious of time, so I will whiz through. Another really important part of our calendar is what we call Neighbours Day. So this is an annual celebration of our local community. We're inviting our neighbours in once a year into the building to, obviously they can come in and see us anytime, but this is a special day. We invite them in to come and have a chat with us, have a cup of tea and cake, look around the building. It's a chance to get to know the people who live around us. We have a really dense population in the north inner city. A lot of people for whom a museum might not be traditionally something they'd want to visit or to do. So we wanted to really kind of deconstruct those barriers as well. And, you know, oops, sorry, skipping ahead there, make people realize that they you know, it is accessible. You can come in and talk to us and just try and be a bit more open. And they've been wonderful those days. Hopefully it won't be too long before we can run them again. And another way that we work with people more widely is through the wider work of the company. So at the heart of everything we do is inviting people to provide their opinions and their input. So we have a system of participatory governance of Dublin City Council Culture Company, and that's done through advisory groups made up of former residents and historians, local community, cultural and heritage experts and artists, and local authority representatives. So a huge range of voices that provide input to the work of the company. And we're also inviting our community to talk about the museum in media interviews and conferences and award ceremonies. Nobody can put it as well as they can. So we like to have as wide a range of voices as possible when we're talking about the museum and the work that we do. And the image in the back there is an episode of the Ryan Tubridy show that was aired from the museum a couple of years ago. And in the picture there, you can see Jane Lynch and Linda Dowling, who have family connections to the building. And we had other people that we spoke to for the oral history project who were invited to be in the audience. And this is one of the last slides we're going to share, but this is a great example of how some of the best things that have come out of this work have been totally surprising. And I hope you've got a sense that at the absolute heart of everything we do is making space for people to come and talk to us, and making space an opportunity for conversation. And this is a trolley or a go-kart that was made by a man called Leo, who grew up in the Wood Quay tenements. And we met Leo as part of the Your Tenement Memories project. We did a recorded interview with him. And a couple of weeks later, totally out of the blue, he appeared in the museum carrying this, which he had made himself with bits of wood and pram wheels and string. And he made that using the same methods that he would have done as a boy in the tenements. And the children in the tenements would have made these out of whatever they could find and raced them down the streets. And he'd made that specially for us. He donated it to the museum, and it's now part of our handling collection. And it is part of how we, that story of the tenements continues to be told. So I think that's a great example of how it's all, for us, it's all about building relationships with people, whether they're former residents of the tenements or local communities. So over to Sheila.
And I think Leo has provided me with one of the most lovely descriptions of a tenement house, and I use it on my tour. He calls them vertical villages, and people love that description of a tenement, because essentially they were vertical villages. So thank you very much for listening to our presentation. You can see our contact points there. Website is very informative. We're very proud of that. Lots of links to YouTube videos on it as well. And if you want to make contact with us, info@14henriettastreet.ie. And thanks very much again.
Okay. Thanks so much. Brilliant. Fantastic. Just going to press stop.